One of the interesting things that have happened over the past couple of days with all of the Disney shakeups is definitely the removal of Ike Perlmutter and the closure of Marvel Entertainment. Well, it's not really closing. They're just moving everything over to Marvel Studios, I would imagine. I think they're just going to call it all Marvel Studios then, or just Marvel. But Marvel Entertainment, a small division centered on consumer products and run separately from Marvel, was redundant and would be folded into larger Disney business units, according to two Disney executives briefed on the matter who spoke on this under anonymous circumstances. So it doesn't even say that Marvel Entertainment is going to go to Marvel Studios. It just says that it's going to be folded into larger Disney business units. Now, there's not a lot of details on this, but this is a pretty big deal. Definitely not going to Burbank, California, where Marvel Studios is located. No, Marvel Entertainment is headquartered at New York, New York. Now, the interesting thing here is what's going to happen to that New York location. Are they going to keep that? Marvel Entertainment is being rolled into other Disney units. What does that mean for the people at Marvel Comics? Because that's where they're located. I think this is an interesting discussion to have because the comic book industry is not in a good place. People like to argue that, but it's pretty undeniable that the mainstream comic book industry is not in the best shape. Okay? You barely have any comics that sell over 100,000. Pretty much just Spider-Man and Batman. The rest is people fighting for scraps. In fact, I think the number that's been kicked around is that Marvel Entertainment only brings in about $60 million to $80 million. Here it is right here. By the end, Mr. Perlmutter's job was limited to businesses like comics publishing, which generates 40 to 60 million in sales annually, according to analysts. For context, Disney had about 83 billion in total revenue. He was also involved in game licensing and consumer products. So that comics publishing, I don't think that 40 to 60 million is totally comics. And I got to tell you, that's a drop in the bucket. That ain't shit. 40 to 60 million. So my question is, what's going to happen to Marvel Comics? Are they going to shut down? That would be crazy if they shut down Marvel Entertainment's office in New York, because it's been there a long time. Now, with Disney taking over Marvel Entertainment, these Disney entities, and they don't even name what it is. It just says larger Disney business entities. They don't even say what is going to happen. Like, are they going to really take a magnifying glass and finally put it right up to Marvel Comics, where you get to see creative output like this? Spider Smasher. Do you know who this is? This is Miles Morales' sister, the Spider Smasher, per Dan Slott. I think this is a character that will appear on the spoiler variant that @Dan Slott was tweeting about a few weeks ago. He says, nope, the character on the left is Spider Smasher, Miles Morales' sister. Edge of Spider-Verse #3 features stories with two characters. The other character in that issue, the one who is not Spider Smasher, will be the mysterious new character from Spider-Man #7, which is his little mini-series that he's writing that nobody gives a shit about. I don't even think it makes the top 50, which is sad. But maybe I haven't looked at the charts in a minute, but I don't remember it being on there. Amazing Spider-Man is, but I'm not sure about Spider-Man number 1 through 7. You think this is shit? And it's, by the way, it's not Miles Morales from the character, I would imagine this is some alternate universe sister of Miles Morales. Of course, the cyberpunk haircut. We like to call it the SJW cut because every female character in comics has this stupid half-shaved haircut, the cyberpunk look. You think this is shit? How about Deadpool's new love interest? Deadpool is officially dating his non-binary love interest. Wade Wilson's relationship with Valentine Vyong, a non-binary assassin introduced earlier in the series, becomes official in Deadpool #5. Amazing! Wow! Non-binary love interest. It is right there. Nobody's reading this shit. Deadpool's comics for sure not in the top 50, by the way. Marvel is just, nobody's reading this shit. That's why they pretty much do whatever they want, because nobody's reading it. So I wonder, what's going to happen with this division. So comic book editor, or at least maybe a former comic book editor, I don't know if she still works there, had some interesting things to say on Twitter. The comic book scene is probably a mass pop culture in general is going to look much different in a couple of years. The industry is going to be much different. This is certain. Interpret that however you'd like. I actually agree it's going to be a lot different because a lot of comic book shops are closing. The digital stuff definitely is not taking off because it's overpriced. I mean, comparative to manga, comics just can't compete, especially in price point. It's like $4 to $5 for a comic. One comic, which is 20-something pages, whereas a manga volume, because they come out in volumes over here, unless you're reading them on apps or online, are about a total of $10, and you get literally 100 pages or however big they are. And they're nice and neat to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know where you're at on it. Whereas, the graphic novels for comics are a mess. And just nobody's really into these characters anymore because, the only people reading comics are people in their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. Not a lot of kids reading comics anymore. And that's on Marvel for blowing it. Blowing it. They had a pop culture phenomena with those movies, and they blew it. But there are other reasons. It's tough to compete with Japan because they barely pay the manga creators over there very much money, and they work them like dogs. So because of that, they can put out cheap content. That's a whole nother discussion, a whole nother video. I think Clownfish TV has actually made some pretty good videos on that. But I was just looking through what she had to say. She followed that up. She followed that question up. And she had some really interesting things to say. Given today's comic news rumors, guess I'm going to have to revise this prediction to a much quicker time frame. That's, of course, that the comic book industry is changing. Now, here is the interesting thing. She starts talking about how comics are better under the radar. Why is that? Because they don't make any money. They bleed money. Somebody once told me Doomsday was the day Disney started paying attention to the comics division. So, yeah. Well, they will be now. Everything's getting folded into other entities at Disney. And she says, at DC, they were always saying the same thing about Warner Brothers. Paul Levitz didn't want anything to happen at DC that might remind Warner Brothers that they existed safest under the radar. She adds that people would quickly be fired at DC for relatively small or mostly unintentional reasons, but the common knowledge was that by making those mistakes, WB was alerted to the presence of DC in some way, so Levitz was aggressively protecting DC. The funny thing is that sometimes this all worked in the opposite way, in which a comic succeeding too much would also give upper management anxiety that WB corporate would turn their attention to DC and possibly take it over. It's interesting. And this woman worked on Punisher, X-Men, edited JLA, Aquaman, Batman, Black and White. She's done a lot of work over at DC and a little bit at Marvel as well. I thought this was interesting. So they don't want comics to take off, and they don't want them to be too much of a news story, which I don't know. Things must have changed because they were pushing for headlines not that long ago. Remember, gay Superman, gay Robin, that got the attention of all of the mainstream press. But for a while, it sounds like they were trying to fly under the radar, which, is smart, but Warner Brothers is a whole different story. What's going to happen now with Marvel Comics? DC Comics still has their own office. So, I don't know. This is an interesting conversation, and once all of this takes place, and I don't know how soon it'll be pushed, but what's going to happen to that Marvel Entertainment office? Are the comics going to move to California just like DC did? Are they going to take a real close look at those numbers? Because DC is hurting for not DC, but Disney is hurting right now, real bad, making lots of cuts. Well, I don't think they'll close the comic book stuff. I could see them going to reprints. Reprints sell more than the new shit. That's a fact, Jack. The facsimiles, they sell real good. That requires a little work. You're basically just reprinting a book. That's cheap. And they've got 70 years of shit? I mean, back when they were Timely Comics, they still own all of that. They could go back to the golden age years and start putting those back out and just work from the beginning to current. So I don't know. What I do know is Marvel Entertainment is about to get closely looked at because now it's all getting folded into Disney. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think about all this. I'd like to hear from you. Also, if you would please like, subscribe, share the video. Make sure you're still subscribed. Hit that notification bell. Check out my Rumble and Locals, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Make sure to check out my Locals. There's a link in the description. It's a fun community that I'm trying to build over here. If you don't want to support me on YouTube, you can come over here. None of that money goes to YouTube. You also can just come over here for free. But if you are a supporter over here, I do plan on doing an extra live stream once a month and throwing links to the supporters so you can actually come on and have a supporter live stream with me. Also, it's a good place to catch all of my content. You don't have to worry about notifications like YouTube. They'll definitely work over here. So come check out my Locals.